Hello, and welcome back to the War of Ideas podcast. Well, we all know what happened in El Paso and Dayton just a week or two ago, and I could tell you all about how bad I think mass shootings are. I could tell you about the differences and similarities between a lone wolf attack and a domestic terrorism attack. I could tell you how much blame we should assign to the president for each of these shootings, about how we could lessen the damage done by curtailing the ability to get guns. But I'd rather spend most of my time trying to evaluate what is causing the uprising of white nationalism. I know not every shooting has white nationalism as the motivation behind it, but for better or worse, white nationalism is in the spotlight. And I think I can offer some insight that most people couldn't. Why? Well, I feel like I've had sort of the same upbringing and environment as these people. The environment that led them to have this sentiment of white pride. And this environment was brewing long before the president got elected, and if we don't do anything about it, it will exist long after the president is gone. So this problem will still be on our hands no matter who we elect in 2020. More policies might be enacted to do something about it, but enforcing laws does not change people's minds. We can compare this to taking guns away to stop violence. Of course, we should try to get dangerous weapons out of the hands of maniacs to reduce the damage that they can do, but they will still be maniacs. And what happens if these people aren't seen as maniacs by a non-trivial amount of people? You cannot change minds by enforcing laws or by picking a new leader. You cannot change minds by taking away guns or using them to kill someone. So what do we do? What do we do when white nationalism is a growing ideology? When we dismiss these people as fringe or as maniacs, we're not doing ourselves any favors. So what I'm going to do in this episode is hopefully do a deep dive into how this white pride ideology has grown among our, specifically, young white men. So, first off, why is it young white men? Well, the white part is sort of self-explanatory, but I think we can all agree that there is a specific type of young person that's getting their mind hijacked by this ideology. And here is my take on why. In particular, why these specific people, why this subset of young white men. Remember, we're talking mostly about people under the age of 30, or to be generous, 40. If I wasn't being generous, I would say the ages of 18 to 25. Of course, it seems that age range will widen over time if we don't stop the bleeding anytime soon. So why are most of these shooters 18 to 25? Surely it can't be a coincidence that an overwhelming majority of mass shooters are the same skin color and in the same narrow age range, and of course the same gender. Sure, there's more white people around than other skin colors, but you would think we'd see a representative amount of mass shooters. A nice diverse group of shooters. But we don't. Also, are these white men middle class? Are they poor? Are they rich? Deciding if this is being done by poor rural people or rich suburban people is difficult when we're talking about boys in their younger 20s. Most of these people who get radicalized and do this type of thing live comfortably enough, thanks to their parents, to spend a lot of time online. And it's no secret most of these people get indoctrinated online. They may live comfortably thanks to their parents, but they might be having a hard time entering the job market and having as easy of a time as their parents did when it comes to things like taking out a mortgage on a home, or renting an apartment, or things like buying a car and affording to go out to eat. And I believe this is the main pipeline that these white nationalists are coming from. There'd be a lot less white people shooting people, and black people shooting people, and Asian people shooting people, if these people had economically secure futures. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that white nationalist shootings are done for the same reasons as gang violence or the mass shooting at Sandy Hook. But what I do think these shootings have in common is that the people who commit them have a lot of problems in their life, to say the least, or at least they think they do. And in the white nationalist case, they blame their economic problems and social problems, we'll get to that. They blame it on immigration, on people of other skin colors, people that aren't like them. And most of us know that these are not the people to blame, but this is why propaganda really sucks, because we have a whole bunch of white people in America who have it out for people who don't deserve it. These white people have real struggles, and they're taking out their frustrations in the wrong way and on the wrong people, thanks to propaganda. And where do they get this propaganda? Online. In this day and age, for these young shooters, they are getting their ideas from the internet. It sort of makes sense to me that these kids are coming from high enough income backgrounds that they get to spend a lot of time on the computer during their teen years, and at the same time, their parents also have low enough incomes to not have as many connections for getting their children into elite universities and high paying jobs. It's basically like a Goldilocks zone of conditions to produce white nationalist radicalization. The amount of wealth of your parents needs to be tuned just right. The year that you were born needs to be tuned just right. Your parents have to be rich enough so that you don't necessarily have to work in your teenage years or take care of family members, so you can spend a lot of time online, and poor enough to not get into an elite college and be handed a sinecure on a silver platter. And it is mostly white families that have the privilege of having this much free time to spend on the internet. And once you get into your 20s and it's time to get your own place to live, get a life partner, and get a good job, and you find yourself not being able to get those things, bad things may happen to your state of mind. You try to reason why you can't achieve these things that your parents did. You have your online resources to look toward. Why don't I have a great job? What are other people around me saying? What's going on at this moment? Why don't I have a job where I can have 2 kids and buy a house on a $30,000 a year salary, like my parents? Well, here's a good reason. Immigrants are taking up all the jobs and creating more competition for me. That's what's changed. That's why I can't be as successful as my parents. That's why I'm still living with them. That's why I can't find an affordable place to live. And you get attached to these facts that you feel might explain why. And so when these kids grow up and they reach that threshold, that 18 to 25 breaking point, and they see the huge gap that they need to fill to reach the level of independence that their parents have, that is the problem. And they take any information that they're given online from their peers and they'll use it as a cudgel. They'll use it as an excuse, as a reasoning as to why this has happened to them. And they don't even realize that it's been happening to people of other races in this country for a much longer time. Anyway, I fit the mold in terms of being in the Goldilocks zone. I am there. I am white. I am a male. I am very close to being between the ages of 18 to 25. But because I'm not quite in that range, that might be why I'm not one of them. I don't know. I'd like to attribute me being the way I am to my parents instead of just what year I was born, but I can't be sure. I feel like I easily could have become one of them if I was just born 2 or 3 years later than I actually was. And that's a really scary thought to behold. I've been embedded in internet culture for as long as I can remember. I was born in it, molded by it. I could have been another young, white, impressionable boy led to these ideas. To me, it's easy to see the path and the decisions that get one to become radicalized, because I've been on the path that they were on. I've seen where it goes. The question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we lead these people back to a more lucid worldview, a more realistic worldview, one that's based in truth? Now, I'll be the first to tell you that their problems are real. Not being able to afford an apartment is one of the most real things that can happen to someone. The problems that these people have are valid and deserve to be addressed by our government and by the people responsible for these problems in the first place. The problems are real, but the way of going about them is where these people are led astray. Where we have an entire immigrant population being blamed for this, and where our economic problems are so bad that we begin believing that people immigrating from Mexico are criminals and rapists, because subconsciously in our minds, that gives us a reason not to let them in, and that will somehow improve our economic situation. So I will look for any excuse not to let them in. This is where terrible economic problems can bring out the worst in people. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And these people are right not to blame themselves, for the most part. Most of them, I wouldn't say, oh, you're just too lazy. That's why the immigrant is taking your job. No, 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 no. It's not your fault, but you have to understand it's not the immigrant's fault either. You're on the same playing field as them. You're both trying to get a more economically secure future. And as for the reason why the seed gets planted and it catches on so well that it's the immigrants' fault and it's the people who don't look like me, it's their fault. There are valid reasons to why that viewpoint catches on more than another one. Humans have an inner primal feeling of disliking people or not trusting people that don't look like them. It's really that simple. It's a trait that humans have had for as long as humans have existed. Human tribes were the reason that humans dominated the world and became the dominant species. Tribalism was the key to survival tens of thousands of years ago, even thousands of years ago. So even if you don't think you're racist, you don't feel racist, I believe you. I believe a white person that votes for Trump and says, I don't want immigrants coming in because they're criminals and they're rapists. I believe them when they say in the next breath, but I'm not racist. They don't see it. It's a subconscious thing. They act like racists, but they don't think they are. We just empathize more with people that look like us. That's just how humans have evolved. Studies have been done. This is proven. I'm going to make either a sort of blog post about this or another podcast about this, but there has to be a written form because I'm going to be linking to a lot of videos and articles and readings. And one of the things I'll be linking to is a lecture by Robert Sapolsky at different timestamps. And he will tell you flat out people will trust people of other skin tones less than people of the skin tone that matches their own. How do we lead these people to live morally better lives? I mean, let's just look at the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. Do you really think that the immigrants coming to your country don't also just want to have a better life like you do? Is that really so difficult to understand? The nationalists do understand it, and they just don't care, and they're looking out for themselves. Anyway, to lead these people back to a better worldview, first we have to understand what white nationalism is. And what better way to define white nationalism than to take it straight from Wikipedia? White nationalists say that they seek to ensure the survival of the white race and the cultures of historically white states. They hold that white people should maintain their majority in majority white countries, maintain their political and economic dominance, and that their cultures should be foremost. Many white nationalists believe that miscegenation, which is mixing of different racial groups through marriage and procreation, multiculturalism, immigration of non-whites, and low birth rates among whites, are threatening the white race. And some believe these things are promoted as part of an attempted white genocide. And why not also take some quotes from David Duke, the former Grand Wizard of the KKK? In August of 2017, after the events in Charlottesville, he said, "We're going to take our country back." So it seems these white nationalists aren't complaining about unfair treatment by any group. They're just complaining that there's too many people of other races in their country. And they're afraid of what will happen if the trends continue and more of them come in and less white people come in. And I just want to know, what are you afraid of? It's not fear of them committing crimes. It used to be that used to be the propaganda that was being spewed a year or two ago. Don't think I didn't forget. Don't think everyone else didn't notice the criminals and rapists line by Donald Trump has been quietly washed away from even Fox News over the past year, because even they know nobody's buying it. When Trump said all the people coming in are criminals and rapists, no white nationalist even talks about that anymore. Now they just use the words invasion and infestation. It's not about the bad things that these immigrants do when they're here. It's just the fact that you're automatically bad if you are here. Are you trying to take my job? You're making it harder for me to get a job when I'm struggling already? Well, I'm just gonna hate you even more. I need that wage slavery to survive, and immigrants are just adding to my competition. Is that what you're really afraid of? Because the whole criminals and rapists thing is completely out of the picture already. If only people competing for jobs wasn't a life and death situation, maybe the prospect of an immigrant taking your job would be a little less frightening, wouldn't it? Why blame immigrants for the fact that you can't get a job? Do what Ben Shapiro would tell you to do. Just pull up your bootstraps and get a better job. Learn the skills to impress your employer enough to get a better job. That's what most conservatives will tell you. Doesn't matter if there's 2 billion immigrants that come in tomorrow, just be better than them and you'll get the job, right? Sorry for my snide comments. I just can't help myself. Let's take a look at another fear that white nationalists have. The fear of being a minority just in and of itself. And you're going to have to expand on that for me because I don't understand why that is a problem. I can sort of understand they're taking my jobs and I don't like that because I can't make money. That seems like a normal complaint. But just that idea of not being the majority group in your country is making you afraid? I don't understand that. You live in America. There should be nothing to be afraid of. When whites become the minority, you're going to be really happy we have the Statue of Liberty. you're going to be really happy there's ways for minorities to prosper in this country. Like, why does race mixing bother you? It has to be on some visceral level. No one said you personally have to mingle with other races. Why do you care if someone else does? It doesn't affect you. No one said you personally have to engage and celebrate other cultures. Why do you care if someone else celebrates a different culture? Do you not want to be left out? Do you not want to be more stigmatized socially than you already are? Just trying to get inside these people's brains. Luckily for you in America, minorities are, at least they're supposed to be, treated well. Do you think if whites become a minority, you'll be cast out and have terrible, destitute lives? Why are you so scared of a change in a statistic? Your voting rights don't go away. Are you scared because of how you see minorities are treated in the present day? Think of how every black person in America feels. They've been a minority since the existence of this country, and I don't see them crying about it, complaining that there needs to be less white people coming in and more blacks so they don't feel cast out. Sure, some people have complaints about not making as much money as other people and not having the same rights as other people, or being looked at differently among people like cops, but no one but white people seem to be angry just at the prospect of their numbers going down. Nothing about their rights being taken away, nothing about being treated worse, just that odds are they're gonna see more people of color throughout their day in the future than they did in the past. I don't see how that's something to be distraught over. White nationalists should feel lucky that they live in the United States and that this country is good enough and progressive enough to accept people of all races and all religions. Minorities, this day and age, they deal with being minorities and they try to be opportunistic in the land of opportunity. What happened to believing that no matter your color or creed, if you work hard, you can make it in America? Do you secretly not believe that? I am now going to read a little bit from the El Paso Shooters Manifesto. If you haven't read it, I suggest you keep it that way. There's nothing useful in there. I'm not stopping you, but I'm not going to link it in the description either. If you want to find it, you have to find it yourself. I'm just going to go through a little bit. I hope you can trust me that I'm not taking any of this out of context. The shooter says his attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas, and that they are the instigators, not him. He is simply defending his country from cultural and ethnic replacement brought on by an invasion. See, I don't understand what coming over the border has to do with being an instigator or an invasion. You didn't say why they were coming over the border. You just said, due to the fact that they are coming over the border into your country, that they are instigating something with you. What are they trying to start with you? The shooter doesn't mention what he thinks the immigrants are trying to do. And if he said that they're trying to come over to commit crimes and they're bringing rapists, he would be lying, and I think even he knows that, so he just doesn't mention it. So it's not really a. So I wouldn't call it an invasion, I would call it a migration. Funny, that's where the word immigrant comes from. Someone who migrates. Okay, next up, he goes on to talk about how the Democrats will own America and they know it because of the increasing Hispanic population and the fact that Hispanic people vote Democrat more than Republican. And for all I know, he could be right about that. But why is that a bad thing? Oh no, there's people that I don't agree with that are becoming the majority, and because we live in a democracy, that means I'm not going to get what I want anymore. Oh no, this is a catastrophe. That democracy is working exactly the way it's supposed to. And he also says that the Democrats are catering and pandering to the Hispanic vote, specifically to do like a takeover. But he says pandering, I say they are just doing what their constituents would want them to do, just like politicians do now. But because they're Hispanic, for some reason, this person thinks that it's the end of the world. As if Hispanics aren't people just like you and I, and that what's good for them wouldn't also be good for you. Next up, automation. The shooter talks about immigration can only be detrimental to the future of America because that would make the effects of automation worse. If he means that more people will be in poverty if we don't solve automation and also let in a bunch of immigrants, then sure. There are going to be more people in poverty if we let more people into our country that can't get a job. Yes, that makes sense. And he says joblessness in itself is a source of civil unrest. Citation needed? What I would say is not that joblessness is a source of civil unrest, but a lack of money leads to civil unrest. You can see where some people might get those two things confused, but this is a very important distinction. The less dependence on a government welfare system, the better. Once again, citation needed. Hey, I mean, if every job is automated, why don't we just collect the wages that we would have otherwise earned? Robots do not need wages. This way, you can do whatever you want and also have enough money to live under a roof and pay for food. He says the lower the unemployment rate, the better. That's what a lot of people seem to think, but I'm in the minority, I guess, where I say that I want a higher unemployment rate and I want automation to take over as soon as possible. I'll take a quote I referenced from one of my previous podcasts from Rutger Bregman. The day a robot takes your job should be the happiest day of your life. End quote. And if we live in a society where it's not the best day of your life, but one of the worst days, then I don't think we need to get rid of robots and get rid of AI. I think we need to change society where it becomes a good thing. There's no other way. Would you rather stop the technological progress of civilization just so that people have superfluous work to do, just so people have an excuse to work. Okay, back to the original topic. He goes on to blame migrants for driving wages down because they create more competition with other American citizens, and it's hard to confirm or deny if that's true, because for certain jobs the answer is yes, and certain jobs the answer is no. What I don't think he realizes, and other white nationalists don't realize when they talk about this thing, is that when more people come into the United States, whether that's by birth or by migration, that creates more jobs as well as having more people to fill the jobs. It's not like if 1,000 people entered the US, that would just be more competition for the same number of jobs. Those 1,000 people need to buy things, so businesses are going to get more business, more people buying from them when the population goes up, so they need to hire more people. This is how these things work. So if migrants are participating in the economy like other Americans do, and I see no reason why they wouldn't, most people, I'm sure an economist would tell you that many jobs are created by them coming into the United States. And being an average American consumer. He says he's against race mixing because it destroys genetic diversity and creates identity problems. Okay, I don't think he understands what genetic diversity means, and I don't understand what he's saying by identity problems. Maybe he's saying it as if, he identifies as white because he's white, but if there's a child whose mom is white and whose dad is Hispanic, that child isn't going to know what identity he is. In my mind, that's okay. That nobody should be proud of their race that they are born as, that they had nothing to do with becoming. You should instead be proud of the things that you do and the things that your friends and family do. He goes on to say that Hispanics, second and third generation Hispanics, form interracial unions at much higher rates than average, and that this is another reason to send them back. I didn't know that we were in China where we should put a cap on birth rates. What is the problem with people having children? So far, all of these reasons to send people back is not because they're bad people. These are not bad hombres. These are not criminals and rapists. I'll say that as many times as I get a chance to, because of just how wrong he is about that. Anyway, so the problem with these people is they are trying to have a good life, and it's impeding on you having a good life because you feel like there's a zero-sum game when it comes to jobs and wages. The shooter says, "The job of my dreams will likely be automated. Hispanics will take control of the local and state government of my beloved Texas, changing policy to better suit their needs. They will turn Texas into an instrument of a political coup which will hasten the destruction of our country." So I'm missing the bridge between Hispanics voting in their own interests and that meaning the destruction of our country. If you mean destruction of the white race, that also isn't true. If you mean healthcare for other races, that is true. White people will get healthcare too, so you should be happy about that. I truly don't understand where the leap. I truly don't understand where the leap comes from over this gap. How do you go from Hispanics causing Democrats to be in control, and that meaning that the country will be destroyed? You realize everybody who votes for their own interests. Hispanics are not going to want to destroy America, especially because, they're living there now when they get voting rights. They're just going to want to make the country better, just like you and me. I truly think right here is the crux of the disagreement between white nationalists and everyone else. It's like, see, I understand you want a roof over your head and a nice happy life and a purpose, but you're blaming people who just want the same thing. They're not trying to take it away from you. They're trying to get it for themselves. And you acting as if there's only one job for every two people, and you have to choose between you and your white friends and the people who aren't white. That's just a fallacy. That is, what's another word to describe that? That's a misconception. Alright, that's all I'll pull from the manifesto, and I just hope I can convince people who are on the same path as this shooter to change their beliefs, to inform them that immigrants who want to come to America literally want the same thing as you do, and the economy is not a zero-sum game. If one person takes a job, it doesn't mean that there's one less for you to have. Jobs are being created and destroyed every moment of every day, and population is only part of what goes into that. And you can keep to yourself, and you don't have to race mix if you don't want to, but if other people do, there should be no problem. It should not affect you in any way. Alright, final section of the podcast. I don't know if I'm going to fully flesh this out in this episode, or if this is even the best place to do this. It probably isn't. But I'll let you in on a little project I will be working on. I briefly mentioned it earlier on that it would be a blog post of some sort, because there has to be a written component to it. There's a lot of links, and most of all, it's just not going to be me convincing these people. I will be assembling a list of resources from other smarter people to convince these white nationalists to change their mind, to change their outlook. I titled my list of steps as De-Radicalization Camp, except I probably won't call it camp because everybody hates camp. And I'm sort of hoping it has an underground feel to it. I don't want it to be, if it ever does get popular or anything, I don't want it to have a mainstream edge to it, because that'll only just make it less effective. I want to be able to reach as many of these white nationalist men under the age of 30 that I possibly can. That is the target demographic. That is the place where I think I can do the most good in changing minds. That's going to do it for this episode, though. I will be sure to let you guys know when this de-radicalization guide is finally made and posted, and that will be linked to on my Twitter if you can't find it. I will leave a link to my Twitter in the description of this episode. Alright, thanks for watching, and see you next time.